Let's bring him in, voice of the Riders. And I'm not sure if this interview is going to be bilingual, but he's in Montreal. Dave Thomas, bonjour, monsieur.
You know what? I could try. I pretended that I was going to be bilingual, but I still have no idea what I ordered for lunch. So that probably wouldn't be best for anyone. My high school French has let me down severely.
Dave, if you're attacking the Weyburn public school system and their inability to educate you in a foreign language, you thought the text line was busy before this. Imagine now. Administrators. Dave, it's funny. Last week, we're Rider Nation. We're a finicky bunch, right? We're 6-1. We win. But last week, it was only by 3 and it wasn't enough. All right. This is where we're at in week 9 of the CFL. There's so many things going right for us. We had to find something wrong. Total different story this week. 6-1 Riders, 5-2 Montreal Alouettes up against, to me, and I want to get your thoughts if you have a differing opinion. Is Noel Thorpe the best defensive coordinator in the CFL?
I think pretty highly of the Saskatchewan Roughriders defensive coordinator, to tell you the truth.
Okay.
He was the guy that won. And again, that's not a stock answer, right? Like, again, he has gone ahead and made teams one-faceted each and every time, each and every week since he has arrived in Saskatchewan. Teams cannot run the ball against him. The only team that did was Edmonton a year ago to the day almost. But aside from that, nobody's been able to chug the ball on the ground. And if you can make your opponent one-dimensional, then you're well ahead of the game. But Noel Thorpe, you got to give him a ton of credit because the resume speaks for itself. I don't know how he hasn't got a shot as a head coach in the league, whether he has wanted it or not, I don't know. But yeah, you look at the numbers and the consistency with the Montreal Alouettes defense, and there's one constant behind it. That's Noel Thorpe.
What do you think the game plan that the Alouettes will try and come out with against the Riders and Trevor Harris?
Well, for Trevor Harris and the Alouettes, I think are going to try to do kind of what Edmonton did, and more so what Calgary did to the Saskatchewan Roughriders, and that was make them one-dimensional. A.J. Ouellette is going to have to be productive and run the football tomorrow if the Riders want to have success against the Montreal defense. Now, yes, Montreal is banged up a little bit on both sides of the ball, but if you look at it in the sheer numbers with Montreal and their defense, they come in, and again, they've been able to stop basically everyone on the run. The only team that's got a better run defense is the Saskatchewan Roughriders, and they've got the number 3 pass defense. And then you look up the horses that they got front. I heard you were talking about Sean Lemon earlier with Charleston Hughes, and we don't know what he's going to be, but he's just going to be another piece that's added to that very formidable defensive line. So I think that the Alouettes have to make the Roughriders want to throw the ball, which, again, pick your poison, and I think that's the poison that they're going to go for. The one number that jumped off the page to me this week when doing the research is there's a lot of things that can happen in 2.14 seconds. Well, on average, again, that's getting on average because it'll happen quicker than 2.14 seconds. Trevor Harris releases the football when he's throwing it. So pretty hard to get to the quarterback if you're getting rid of it on average 2.14 seconds. So that's going to be clear as day to me whether or not the Saskatchewan Roughriders can run the football to allow Trevor Harris a little more time than the 2.14 seconds that he averages to get rid of it.
Trevor Harris will be without one of his weapons. The big news out of Riderville today, Sam Emilus added to the 6-game injured list. Forget production on the field. What he brings as a player and locker room wise, that's a big piece missing from the Rider roster.
Well, big piece, a big Canadian piece, but also a guy that is pretty formidable when it comes to the run game. The blocks that he sets up for his running backs and the backfield, again, that's tremendous to speak that he's a 1,000-yard receiver 2 times over, right? Samuel Emilus is a big blow, for sure he is. And, such an unlucky play near the end of that football game against the Edmonton Elks when he was tackled down low. And I did hear the commentary from fans that were at Mosaic Stadium taking in practice this week. Was he a defenseless receiver or not? And that's a pretty good question when you go ahead and you reevaluate the play as a whole. It was a wide receiver screen that was thrown to the flat. The Edmonton defender got there, bang, bang, and Did MLS have an opportunity to brace himself for the hit? I don't know what the answer is. But yeah, he's going to be on the 6th game. But what I find really interesting is that, okay, so Joe Robustelli, Dante Myers, and Keyshawn Johnson, those are the 3 American receivers that'll start. Then Del Duncan Busby will be one Canadian and Tommy Neal the other. But if you went and looked at this receiving core coming into this football game, where are you going to take out an American? Because Sean Bain Jr. is getting really, really close to a return. And those guys you can't. And then as far as the Canadian receivers go, I'm really excited to see Tommy Neal. I loved the way that he played with the Toronto Argonauts as a fan. And now having an opportunity to see his work ethic in camp and, of course, through practice thus far this season. It's unfortunate that he was banged up at the end of camp, but I think it's an exciting prospect injecting him into the lineup.
Well, as they say, and it's been used again and again and again, next man up, if that's Tommy Neal. Maybe Mitch Picton's back on the roster. Maybe that means that Mitch gets more targets. And it's funny. All Picton does is deliver. Anytime that they throw, all he does is produce results. So maybe it's going to be somebody's time to shine. But with Sam Amelis going on the 6-game injured list, it's unfortunate, especially when the Riders go into Montreal. We had Charleston Hughes on in hour number 1, and he had said that he thinks that the Riders, like you had said, tough time running against with just AJ Ouellette and not Kadeem Carey. No disrespect to Mario Anderson, but it's not the same when you can have that effective 1-2 punch. And then on the flip side of things, you have Jason Moss, who I thought last week, McLeod Bethel Thompson, who doesn't come off the bench well, but when he has a week to prepare, looks pretty good. Last week, Calgary looked pretty good. But I think Jason Moss called a really good game for him. And I expect more of the same, those not conservative plays, but the high percentage stuff to let the athletes run and make plays like the long handoffs and the screens and the quick hitters and stuff. Is that what you're thinking as well from a Moss game plan?
That's what I would attack if I was Jason Moss. But the interesting thing is, okay, so Travis Tice, he's a rookie out of South Dakota. He will get the brunt of the carries, but again, he's been battling injury and nicked up a little bit. So behind him is Sean Thomas Erlington as far as the running game goes. And you look statistically, the Montreal Alouettes don't really like handing the ball off all that much, considering they're averaging the 6th most rushing yards per game at about 95 yards a game. So if I'm Jason Moss, I do want that running game to get going. Can Travis Tice do it? We'll have to wait and see. But then when it comes to McLeod Bethel Thompson, look at the receivers he's without. Yeah, it's a big blow missing Samuel Emelis, but you don't have Philpott and company in Montreal. You're going to have Alexander Hollins, who was cut by the Edmonton Elks out of training camp. He'll be making his first start as a Montreal Alouette tomorrow night. Then you've got Sibasu, who I like. He's a young receiver as far as being around as a starter. He's had 6 years of CFL experience. It'll be interesting to see what he brings. You've got a raw rookie and Hadeem Harris on the one side, Charleston Rambo on the other, and then Tyler Sneed, who's kind of been Mr. Everything when the Alouettes couldn't find a returner. Sneed went back and did it. The 3-year pro has got some good numbers. We'll have to see whether or not they can lend the support to McLeod Bethel Thompson, as they're going to be in tough against a pretty tough Saskatchewan Roughriders secondary.
One of the things that impressed me last week with Montreal taking on the Stamps is Montreal just hung around, and were able to do enough. And that was on the road. Not that McMahon Stadium is the hardest place to play fan-wise, because it always looks like there's 8,000 people at a game at McMahon Stadium these days. But I thought, pretty good. You're missing your starting quarterback and you came on the road and you were just able to do enough. Now you're back home in Montreal. You should technically have all the advantages and the prep and the extra week. And there's something about Danny Machocha and the way that these guys construct a roster. They just seem to find guys. Like, I didn't realize if Austin Mack isn't playing, who's the next one that Danny Machocha's found? Because he always seems to find them. That's the frustrating part about the Alouettes is they somehow just reload with obviously guys we've never heard of, but when they do make their mark, you're like, oh, okay, I get it.
It's scary that we're thinking the same, because I'm on the exact same page as you when it comes to Hakeem Harris for the Montreal Alouettes. Mm-hmm. Again, rookie receiver, he's going to get more of an opportunity this week for sure, and I'm really curious what that opportunity is going to lead to. And You're right. The Montreal Alouettes, it's interesting to try to see and figure out how they're coming in. They've won 2 games in a row, but those last 2 games, they've led the game for a total of 6 minutes and 58 seconds. So they haven't been running away with football games, and they've been piecing and cobbling together victories, which may sound a little bit like the Saskatchewan Roughriders, who were 6-1. So I'm bang on with you. I think the other thing to consider that is just human nature at its finest is that the Saskatchewan Roughriders get their second bye of the season after this week, right? And you go back to the school analogy. Remember when you were back in school, and I wasn't doing well in high school French, apparently? But remember when you're writing those exams, right? The pressure is on that you have to perform when the spotlight comes on, but you know what's ahead when it comes to that summer vacation. And that's exactly what the Saskatchewan Roughriders, I think, are staring down the barrel at right now. And they've got a lot of leadership that will talk about it, I'm sure, with some of the younger guys, but there's not a lot of those younger guys that are kicking around. But again, put that into context and think that a lot of the players, this is going to be the last substantial break that they really get until the end of the season. They'll get another bye week in September, but it's not the same because in September, the playoffs are in sight. You're starting to jostle for playoff positioning and maybe understand what the playoffs may or may not look like for your team. So I think that this is going to be the ultimate break for the Saskatchewan Roughriders coming up, but it doesn't happen until after tomorrow night's game.
Sean Lemon said he's done talking about it. His suspension, or as Charleston Hughes said, allegedly gambling on CFL games. I guess we're still playing that. We're still not admitting. I hope that tomorrow, just after the first, it's just there, and he's just another player, and this can just be done with. I think that for everything that's gone on with all of this, it's been a long year and a half hearing about Sean Lemon. Just go back to being a football player. Let's just play the game.
Well, and again, I don't know Sean personally, so I can't comment on any of that. The Saskatchewan Roughrider coaching staff definitely do know Sean Lemon very, very well. They say that he's a stand-up individual, and who am I to contradict that? But there is one exception to who he will talk to, and that's coming up with us tomorrow. He is agreed to join us tomorrow on the pregame show, so he will break the silence, talk about the whole gambling suspension, the indefinite suspension, how it went down. Additionally, he's going to go ahead and he'll talk a little bit about the PED suspension, which he has now served, and coming back to play here in Montreal. So we're fortunate enough that he's agreed to come on with us tomorrow during the countdown to kickoff.
I forgot about the PED thing. Yeah. There's a lot.
That was the kick him when he's down penalty.
As the kids would say, there's probably a lot to unpack there. I just want to get your thoughts on some other stuff. Last week, Toronto looked so good beating Winnipeg. And if you're Ryan Dinwiddie, you're probably tearing out your hair going, where has this been all season? They looked at ease. Now, keep in mind the weather conditions in Toronto in that rain, but Winnipeg is looking very average and very beatable when they've lost. When they've won, they've looked good. But you could say that about any team. Tonight's the rematch in Winnipeg. I expect, although it's Chris Streveler and the Bombers, are you expecting a better effort out of Winnipeg?
I don't think it was an effort issue with Winnipeg. It was an execution issue for sure. And sometimes you can beat yourself before you even go out, and knowing that Zach Collaros is nicked up and not going to play, that can really go ahead and weigh on a team, right? Especially if you're concerned about his well-being, which everyone is, right? So, yeah, there were execution problems definitely in Winnipeg, and I thought that game fed right into the hands of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers because they're playing on the old crappy grass that got torn out right after the game. They are in the midst of a rainstorm, which all to me leads to advantage offense and advantage running game, but Brady Oliveira just couldn't get churning, and maybe that's just a testament to the Toronto Argonauts, who were in a little bit of a desperation mode last week, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens this week. And I'm really, really curious when it comes to the CFL schedule, because this is the third time this season that the Winnipeg Blue Bombers have played back-to-backs. They did it with BC earlier, then they went back-to-back with Calgary, now back-to-back with Toronto. I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse, but definitely something that they've had to handle here the last couple of weeks.
Hamilton earned my respect last week going into BC and winning that game, because Hamilton, they always get off to a bit of a rough start. They play in the East, and Charleston says it's participation trophies out there, basically until the Grey Cup, and then the East always wins. But going in and winning in BC against the Lions and how they did that, Hamilton's legit. They're a good football team, well coached. Bo Levi Mitchell. Tomorrow in Edmonton, you can't take anybody lightly. But if Hamilton does what they have been doing lately, I don't give them. I don't see why they don't beat the Elks tomorrow at home or on the road in Edmonton.
Well, first of all, credit where credit is due. Number one, to the Hamilton Ticats for winning that game in BC last week, and maybe credit to the BC Lions as well, because a missed offside call I thought cost them the game. Because Nathan Rourke and the offense went 2-0, which allowed Hamilton to get the football back, and very clearly on that second down play, there was an offside against the Tiger Cats that went uncalled. And if that gets called, it's an automatic first down for BC. You bleed another 60 seconds off the clock. Likely it's game over. Not wanting to take anything away from Hamilton, you got to give them credit for sticking to it. You take away Kenny Lawler, well, that's fine. We'll go and throw it to Keandre Smith. No problems. We're fine. We're good. So Hamilton has got some fight back, which I don't think that they've had thus far. It's going to be real interesting in Edmonton tomorrow because the Elks, they are now up against it, right? They have to go ahead and start winning football games to salvage their season. And what I like with the defense of the Hamilton Ticats is that they can disguise quite a bit. And I'm not saying that you're going to fool Cody Fajardo because I don't believe that at all. But maybe you fool some of the receivers right now because he didn't get a lot of help with guys getting open last week. And yeah, when you're shredded for 8 sacks, and yeah, okay, maybe he should have thrown the football away, as Charleston alluded to it a little bit, or maybe it was you, whomever alluded to it. What I'm saying is that there's still 8 sacks given up by the Edmonton Elks. They ran the ball 5 times for 29 yards. So they obviously know that they have to be more balanced. And Cody Fajardo told us before the game that he was going to run plays during the football game that he didn't have an opportunity to practice. Like, he didn't get a live rep in practice because he was behind Trey Ford the entire time, and they installed plays when they were split in practice time that he didn't get a chance to run. So to me, that was remarkable and incredible, and I guess we're going to find out tomorrow what the Edmonton Elks really are, because I think that all the chips go into the middle of the table for the Edmonton Elks, who know they've got to get a win at home against a tough Hamilton team.
You mentioned desperation in Edmonton. Last night, I thought the Red Blacks, it was a desperation game. And they caught the Stampeders at the absolute right time. All of the injuries on offense, including Vernon Adams. And you saw the drop-off. PJ Walker's not Vernon Adams. Ottawa wins 31-11. I think they did what they needed to do, but I don't think the Red Blacks' problems are solved. Because I think if VA plays that game, it's totally different. A total different Stampeder team who you could tell they were trying, but it just wasn't there. But if I'm a Red Black fan, I'm a little encouraged, but nowhere near out of the woods.
Well, and if I'm an Ottawa Red Blacks fan, number one, I applaud my defense for making the plays that presented themselves, right? PJ Walker, you go ahead and you play the opposition that you face, and that was PJ Walker for the Calgary Stampeders last night. So, yes, I applaud the defensive effort by the Ottawa Red Blacks, which I think allowed the offense to get on track. But this Ottawa Red Black team is such a night and day difference when they've got Drew Brown at quarterback. Right, Drew Brown comes in, throws for 400 yards against the Saskatchewan Roughriders in week 1, and then is banged up and misses a couple of more. Then he takes that nasty contact to the helmet, and he's out again. So Drew Brown and his health is paramount. And if I'm the Ottawa Red Blacks, I'm not going to kid you. I'm really watching this game with the Saskatchewan Roughriders closely tomorrow because I want to see what McLeod Bethel Thompson perhaps is all about. Now, I'm not saying that Montreal in any way, shape, or form are thinking about moving on from McLeod Bethel Thompson in terms of a trade. But if there was a move to be made, I think that there's a lot of people that would look at McLeod Bethel Thompson as maybe being somebody that the Montreal Alouettes might think about, just with Caleb Evans and James Morgan, who's behind Caleb. And James Morgan, the Alouettes are really, really high on. So I look at going into this season with the Ottawa Red Blacks and not having found a lot of depth at the quarterback position, and they still don't have it. And again, nothing against Drew Brown. He's got to stay on the field. And if he does stay on the field, the Ottawa Red Blacks are going to be successful and really pose a challenge. But if Drew Brown gets nicked up again, it'll be interesting to see what happens in the nation's capital.
It's funny you bring up the trade scenario, because if the Saskatchewan Roughriders have the best or in the top 2 best backup quarterback in the league, that's a pretty interesting chip. Now, if you're Geno Lewis, and we heard all the offseason stuff and signs in Ottawa, but here you are, you're 2-6. Money and all that, but do you want to win? Trade chips like that, big play receivers. And if he's staring down the fact of there may be no playoffs, it's interesting, because if the Red Black season is potentially salvageable, and I don't know if it is, but it is the East. You just got to be better than the Argos, right? Because I think Hamilton will kind of stay where they are. Montreal, I can't see them cratering. So you just kind of got to be better than Toronto.
Well, and it's interesting, right? Go across the league, right? And rank the quarterback rooms. And don't stop at 2. Go down to 3, go down to 4. And I'm with you. Like, it's pretty hard to dispute the Saskatchewan Roughriders' depth at the quarterback position with Harris, Mayer. Then you've got Tommy Stevens and Jack Cohn.
Jack Cohn.
Yeah. So
eventually, you're one of these 4. You're going to lose part of this room eventually. Not everybody's going to stick around because it's going to be opportunity or money or all of this. And now that we're in play and you don't have a Sam Amelis for 6 games, you've got this, and there's not a ton of trades in the CFL, which is a little, I've always found interesting in a sports league. But it's just food for thought. Dave, is it hard to believe that it's already week 9 of the CFL season? Or does it seem like it's week 9 of the CFL season?
No, it's gone by quick. Absolutely. And again, we've talked about it ad nauseum, and you can't dispute it. The schedule for the Saskatchewan Roughriders has played out so nicely. Like, they've been in tough. Like, they haven't had an easy schedule. But boy, as it has worked out so well for the Roughriders. Again, they've only had a couple of short weeks that they've had to prepare for. One was week number 1, and then, of course, the last one was their last game. So really, they haven't had to go and prepare for a ton of short weeks. They've had good rest, and they're spaced out the bye weeks terrifically. So you even look at, okay, yeah, Samuel Emelis is on the 6-game injured list. That's not great. But you know what? The team is actually starting to get a little bit healthier, if you can believe it. The offensive line is going to have 2 new starters, not because of injury, but because of healthy, if that's a word. So again, the schedule has done the Roughriders favors. Does it seem like we're nearing the halfway point of the season? Absolutely not, but I think we're right on target for how it feels.
Can you ask Malik Carney how he, in the middle of summer in Saskatchewan, can wear a balaclava? Because he'll probably be wearing it tomorrow in Montreal, and I assume it's going to be muggy. How can you play a football game with that on your head and not be just dying, sucking wind?
You're not the only one asking that question, because Coach Mace continually gives it to Micah Johnson and Mike Rose. The 2 guys always wear sweatpants at practice, 30 plus or whatever. They're going out in sweatpants, and it's just baffling to me. But yeah, I don't know how they do it, but it's working, so don't change it.
I saw him after one of the sacks last week on the sideline. He took his helmet off, and I'm like, how are you wearing? Oh, man. Sometimes just watching the game on TV, at times listening on the radio, you can be breaking out in a sweat if you're in the car or the truck, and you're like, how can those guys be playing a high impact sport?